what's the biggest thing you're going to be looking for in this game? If Tennessee's going to pull off the quote-unquote upset, as good as they are, number one team in the college rankings, if they're going to pull off the upset in Athens, to you, what needs to happen here for Tennessee?
I think Tennessee's got to take away some things that Stetson Bennett does offensively. And again, this is under the caveat that I believe Tennessee's offense will go out there and score. Now, again, will it score 50? I doubt it. Will it need 40 to win? Maybe. But I think Tennessee can go and score 30 points. You're in that type of rhythm with Hendon Hooker, with Josh Heupel and Alex Golesh scheming things up, with Jalen Hyatt out of this world, getting Cedric Tillman back, this offensive line blocking the way it's been. The offense really just isn't even the worry right now. So again, I always flip the script and say, what does Tennessee's defense need to do to slow down Stetson Bennett? You got to take something away. Like, Brock Bowers is going to be the go-to guy. I mean, he's the leading receiver in terms of yards. He's got, I want to say 8 touchdowns on the season all told. He's got 3 rushing touchdowns. 6 touchdowns altogether. He's ran the football 3 times, has 3 touchdowns. I mean, he's an athlete. He's a football player. You're not going to just shut him out. It's like a basketball. It's can you limit everybody else and allow him to go off? But if you limit everybody else, you're still going to win the game most of the time. That's kind of what I look at right there. But not just Brock Bowers, just kind of the tight end position. Darnell Washington is not as big as a threat, don't get me wrong, but he's still a good player. You got to stop the run game. You mentioned that run game with how there's not one lead bell cow. Kenny McIntosh is the starter. He started every game, or he's played in every game and started most games, but he's the leading receiver, or the third leading receiver on this team with 29 receptions. He's only averaging less than 50 rushing yards a game, but you've got, Dejon Edwards, who's really come along. Kendall Milton, when he's there, you feel good about him. Of course, there's a freshman in Branson Robinson. You got to take away that run game. Tennessee's rush defense has looked really good, Chris, this year. I mean, they've been pretty phenomenal. And I understand at LSU you threw it an awful lot, and some of these other the 2 MAC teams threw it a ton as well. So it might skew it a little bit, but man, Tennessee's rush defense has looked really, really good. So, try to take that away and allow Stetson Bennett to stay in the pockets. Don't let him get out. And, throw to those tight ends and see if that's enough to beat you. It might be, but you got to start taking away some things offensively. Also, you got to keep him in the pocket, man. He is the most underrated, and Josh Heupel spoke on this Monday. He is like the most sneaky, underrated, no one thinks about athlete with the football in his hands. He makes plays. He can run. He torched Tennessee a couple times last year on the ground. You can't let that happen again this year. Those are 2 of the things. Like, just take a few things away with what Georgia does offensively, because you're not going to stop Brock Bowers.
Yeah, and to me, like you said, Tennessee has done such a good job of jumping out early, with the offense, getting leads, and kind of, giving the defense the confidence to say, hey, we already got you a lead. Go out there and try to get us a stop. It's interesting when you look at what this Georgia defense has done. They're tops in the SEC in terms of yards allowed. Have they had the benefit of playing a softer schedule so far? I would say yes, when you consider, South Carolina has been a little bit better than we thought, but they beat the hell out of them earlier in the year. But then, since then, you've beaten Kent State, Mizzou, Auburn, who fired their coach, Vandy, who's dead last in the conference, and just beat Florida, who's obviously in a transitional year. So I say all that to say, has Georgia, since week 1 against Oregon, really been tested? I mean, I know they were, Kent State was doing some things and moving the ball home, scored 22 points. And then the Mizzou game, some people argue they should have lost, but put together some drives there in the fourth quarter and were able to come back and win it. This is going to be the best team since Oregon that Georgia has faced. What is Georgia right now? Again, we saw them beat up on Vandy. We saw them, put the foot on the neck of Florida this past week. But I'm curious to see, like, for instance, Eric, the most points they've given up in a game this year is tied. Kent State and Missouri, they gave up 22 points. They gave up 20 against Florida. We got to think Tennessee's got, if they hold Tennessee to 22 points or less, Tennessee's not winning this ball game. So it's got to be the most points scored on this Georgia defense all year long if Tennessee's going to have a chance to win it. And then on the flip side, what kind of confidence is Tennessee's defense playing with right now? I mentioned earlier, holding Kentucky, a top 20 team, to just 6 points. They got to be playing, riding high right now. And that secondary with 3 interceptions, Stetson Bennett has had a couple interceptions already this year. Can they make that big, force that big turnover? Can they force Georgia to making that big mistake on offense? And again, keep in mind, Georgia's going to have the home crowd behind them, and Athens is going to be rocking, and those Georgia fans are going to be going absolutely nuts. And so there are a lot of challenges here for Tennessee, but I would say, first and foremost, if they're going to win this game, they got to get to at least 30 points or more. I think you'd agree on that. And two, I think they've got to force a turnover or two on Georgia. I just think if Georgia is playing ball control, eating up clock, running the football, it's going to be very difficult for Tennessee to get that offense going if they can't get the ball back.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, Tennessee's got to score. Tennessee's got to do what it's been doing offensively. One other thing I'm looking for, real quick, and I know we got to hit a reset here, but Georgia on the season so far, it's been really good. Obviously against the run, allowing 85 yards on the ground. I think Georgia allowed 19 yards or something crazy against Sanford. That's going to skew those stats. But if I'm not mistaken, Florida ran for over 100 yards against them. I want to say Missouri ran for over 100 yards against them. Maybe South Carolina. There's been 3 teams that have gone for over the century mark against Georgia. Tennessee's running the football really well right now with Jabari Small and Jalen Wright. This offensive line, I mean, there's Darnell Wright's going to be an All-American, and there might be 2 first-team All-SEC guys on this offensive line. They're playing well, and I think Tennessee needs to run the football. It could not run the football last year in this football game. Hendon Hooker might be called on to run the football a little bit. You don't want to do that an awful lot because a lot of unnecessary hits, but he's just so dynamic with the ball in his hands. That might be something that you look forward to, but Tennessee's got to run the football in this football game. It couldn't last year. It couldn't against Florida last year or Alabama, yet it did this year. Ran for over 200, I think 177 yards against Alabama this year, whatever it was. They ran the football in both those games. Let's see if Tennessee can run the football in this game, Chris. It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one for sure. A lot of individual matchups we'll be watching.